Yeah, every quarter we'll do it now.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're out of executive session.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the, the administrative staff sheets for 2020.
Okay. I approve them for administrative staff timesheets for January to September as is 2020. Is that?
Yeah, that's fine.
A second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, no old business, I believe, so we'll go right into new business. And what I'd ask everyone to do is to look at page 7 of your packet and to take some time to look at the third quarter financial review. There is anything that you'd like to share that from the third quarter that kind of stands out from other quarters?
Staff time,
Exactly.
but we went through all of that. I think a good chunk of that is the grants, and then it was also Golden Hills closing and the Kingstonian. And the Kingstonian time is also, I'm trying to break that out separately in my timesheets for this quarter, but it's a lot of time on that project.
Yeah, okay. So in other words, because what I was looking at was where we are third quarter in
Yes.
terms of the overall budget. So
Yes.
the rate that we're going November and December, we've almost met all of our 2020 budget, so we may be in a deficit at the end of the fiscal year.
And then legal fees, there were no legal fees for September, so that's just July and August.
So at least 3
And
months,
stuff.
10,000 for the next 3 months.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
I don't anticipate that there would be a lot, just so you know, because we've been doing, I think I told you, a lot of the resolutions ourselves, and then most of the legal time should be towards the project that we currently
Okay,
have.
great. And then auditing, we hit budget amount in September for auditing.
Oh, that was for the, yeah,
Yeah, right.
because we paid the full bill.
Okay,
So,
but we're at 53% of total expenses, so we're actually, in terms of our overall expenses, we're actually doing fine.
yeah, part of that is also only because the grants were only at 70,000
Yep.
through September. There was a significant amount that went out in October and November too.
Okay.
But it'll be under the 200.
Okay.
And then this is the new budget that we approved last month, so it looks very different than what we had.
Okay.
Other than that,
And then
nothing on
the
that sheet.
general ledger, because with the AR, the aging summary, we went through in governance, so.
Yeah, it's the same exact thing we
Yep.
already saw.
And then the general ledger, anything out of the ordinary, it looks like it's mostly PPE that came in September.
Yeah,
Okay.
yep, that's all it is. And then the escrow, was the escrow sheet in here too?
I don't see it.
Oh, here it is,
Is it
on
in there?
page 10. That's just what's in escrow, and then I have to reconcile with Brooklyn Bottling. I think that I have to get the final payment to Low-Key Brill, but Brooklyn Bottling's project is done. So that'll come off of the escrow. The Kingstonian now through this quarter is negative, and I think we need to change, maybe that's something we should change on the fee schedule guidelines. We have $1,000 for what we get as a deposit.
Yeah.
But by the time you pay for the live stream of the public hearing and the transcript that gets done, you're at over $1,000. And then if there's a background check or anything else, then, so it's just not enough. And it will get settled at closing, or it will get settled at some point, but maybe we just need to move that to $2,000 as a deposit. And they'll get it back if they've overpaid.
Okay, so that we can move to another meeting, right?
Yeah, or do it on this fee schedule guidelines when we go through it.
Oh, that's true too, okay.
Other than that, there's nothing overly exciting, I don't think.
Okay. Trey, any questions?
Nope, I'm just listening.
Okay, great. Do we need to approve these?
Yes.
Can you make a motion to approve the third quarter financials?
I'll make a motion to approve the third quarter financials.
Second, all in
For
favor?
the IDA. Aye.
Aye. Okay, great, thank you. All Alright, so, the next agenda item is we need to review the RFPs that came in, from different firms for the, independent auditor, that were issued in September. So you have, and you can find those on, page 28. Thanks for putting that together, Rose. Okay, so, Rogique looked, I read through all of them, I know Faye has as well. We have, 4 different
Yeah,
RFPs,
we
one of which the
sent-
formal one has changed their name, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so we sent out the RFPs to all of the ones we had sent it out to before, plus I added a few more accounting firms that I knew of. For the most part, a lot of accounting firms are getting out of dealing with audits, it's just too much work and not enough money based on like the AICPA guidelines, they don't wanna do it. So this was all we got back. UHY, I wanted to also say is Rick's choice, because that's who we've been using. I know I've said I'm not like overly thrilled with a few things that they've done or not done, but I don't have any like major objections to it. And then I was also thinking the EFPR, Faye I know has really liked that one. They have several pages of government audits that they do. They have several IDAs. So the other thing I was thinking was if you both felt so inclined to go with that one or not. But maybe we could I could call, or Rick and I could call together a couple of the clients they currently have and call them and we could see what we think of them, or we just go with UHY again. But I think the other two, Sickler and RBT, are just too much.
I would agree,
Yeah.
I think my inclination reading through this, and not having met any of the other firms, like having no sense of who they are, I mean, I think price is a very important criteria and, something that should be prioritized in making a decision, but price isn't everything in terms of all the services, additional complexity that we're probably anticipating with future projects and one that we're currently reviewing. And I'm inclined that because we don't know really any of the other firms to go with who we know. I know there's been issues, but I don't think anything was
No,
earth-shattering or major.
a few things were missed that they shouldn't have missed on the Paris reports.
Mhm.
That they do review, they definitely shouldn't have messed that up. Then, there was definitely a sense of like, they're too comfortable with it, in my opinion, where they just didn't really do very much.
Mhm.
So that part I didn't really like, but I also know that there's not a whole lot I mean, there's more activity now, cause we did the grants.
Mhm.
And there's also more activity because now we're actually keeping an accounts receivable because we have those annual fees.
Yep.
But other than that, there's not like a whole lot of activity. I know Rick also really liked that UHY is local.
Yep.
Where EFPR is obviously not. And I do think that does add
Mhm.
value also.
Well, if we went with the new one, would that mean anything as far as you having to get a lot more workload done to get them up to snuff or in line or whatever?
I don't
mean,
think so, to be
So
honest.
it's just be sending the same information that they're gonna require like anybody else would.
Yeah.
So it would be saving us, definitely money. It just depends on who you'd be working with and who and how timely they are. I mean, they have to be timely because it has to be done in a certain amount of time, right?
Yeah, that timeliness wasn't an issue necessarily for UHY. I was a little frustrated because they told me they were coming to our office last November to do like the in-office check, and they never did come.
Mhm.
So that I didn't really like. And I sent them everything electronically. The only issue I had with timing was because our projects didn't get us back the information. And then I did have an issue with ABO because our audit report didn't match the Paris report because UHY completed the audit report before I told them to, based on incorrect figures. And so then when I put in the information to ABO was like, why is your Paris different than your audit? And I had to say, well, the auditor completed the report earlier and didn't feel that it was necessary to go back and change it. And then that was an okay response, but it just was kind of like. So
Well, it's worth a I mean, an interview, right?
In my opinion, I agree with Rick on what he's saying. I think those things are valid, but I do think it does at least warrant us giving them a call and hearing what they have to say. Also calling a couple of the IDAs that they work with and hear what they have to say. And so I feel like you could make a motion to go with, I'm making this up right now, EFPR, unless something comes out of those calls that warrants us not doing it, or vice
Let me
versa.
ask you this, when do we have to make a decision by?
Audit committee
Mm-hmm.
right now.
So we have to make a decision on one of these two right now, not having been able to talk to either group.
So should have we talked to any of these
Yeah,
people
that's-
first
yeah.
before this meeting?
Yeah, or that's why I'm saying we could make the motion to go with one or the other based on whatever comes out of the phone calls, but we have to be able to send it to the board meeting.
Okay, I'm inclined at this point, given the timing, to go with our existing provider, but with the caveat that you have a conversation with them.
That
About
makes
some of the things that, you know, you were not pleased with last year, and the board hasn't made a final decision, but you're making a call to see, you know, how they would address some of your concerns. How does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds reasonable to me.
Okay, sound reasonable?
Yeah, because we do have a backup that we could
Right.
go with easily
Right,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
want to do,
if they.
you go with that?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have like there's no like personal issue with them, they're professional, they're responsive, but it was just a few things that it was like, we're paying, in our opinion, that's a lot of money.
Okay.
To them it might not be, but to us, it's a lot, so I would just like them to do.
Listen, they're not the cheapest, but they're not the most expensive either. They're right in that kind of spot where we can, okay, so let me see if I can get a motion here. I move that we select UHY, to enter into a 3-year, contract to do our, auditing, with the stipulation that after Rose has had a conversation with them to share her concerns, and some of the challenges that she's experienced working with them, how they respond to those questions and how they plan to rectify that moving forward. If that is unsatisfactory to Rose, that we have the option to then go with EFPR.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
You don't have, that was one,
I did,
but it's
Yeah.
clear, right?
yes, it was, yeah,
Okay. You go with it, you're good with that, so,
yep, that makes sense to me.
okay, excellent.
I really do see, they're far away, and I really do see value with staying local too.
I think that's right. Okay, awesome. All right, our next agenda item is Paris reports and annual site visits. Information regarding that is begins on page 175. All right, so it's that time of year again where I know you have to start thinking about sending out notes and letters and getting all the information that we need for Paris report.
Yeah, last year I know you could see it was sent out December 20th. The
Yeah.
board wanted it sent out sooner. However, Randall and I also thought about the idea that they physically cannot get all this stuff together until after
the
year end.
Yeah.
So we didn't want to send it too early and then have you file it in your later bin and never get to it, So I don't think that it necessarily needs to go out too much early, maybe a little bit earlier. But I also would like to figure out scheduling site visits somehow. I know we talked about it a little bit.
Yeah.
And that this is something that I would bring to the site visit also.
So I just want a couple of things. We have so there's one, Faye, you know this because you did this last year. So if, in terms of our other policy, we are, in our enforcement policy, we should go every other year to do a site visit. However, best practice is every year, and you and Rose
At
went
least
out
once.
last year, right?
Well, I went once, that's
So-
all I was allowed to go.
Okay. So the question is, like, do we wanna do site visits this year? We did them last year, so we could technically be in compliance to our other policy by not. But do we wanna do site visits, and if so, do we do them electronically? Do we potentially do them on site? And then the other question is who? I think Rose found it really valuable to have you go last year, and I think it's valuable to have one or two people from the board actually to go on the
I
site
think-
visits.
I'm sorry.
No, so that's just kind of the,
Yeah.
one of the major questions for discussion.
I would love to see the board members participate in site visits and each one have like, if you have 15 that you're gonna be doing in a year, have a board member responsible for 3 or whatever it is that works out.
35 of them, 37, something like
37 site visits. So 5 of them.
that. And so you found it valuable going too,
I
right?
did.
I thought it was
because
great
The whole
for you to come.
process was really good to see, and Rose was able to calm down our participant a lot.
I heard that you were.
I gave you credit.
Just
Yeah.
FYI, she gave you credit. for it.
Okay, you know, whatever, but it worked, it worked, so.
I'm in favor of board members participating in site visits.
I think
I
it's
am too.
important to really see what goes on too,
Yeah.
and then you understand the project a little bit more and some of the issues they're facing.
Completely, and it puts a personal face to every project, not just all this.
So what did you think about the idea, like I had said to Diane, maybe we would try Zoom or something this year? I do think it's important to still do something. And I think it's important to have the conversation, because some of them are not gonna be meeting job numbers, so we need to have that
I
that
would much
conversation.
prefer it to be a physical site visit.
My issue was on some of them that might not be a possibility, like Woodland Pond, for example, Golden Hill.
Well, maybe then certain ones you can, but like the factories, the book room, you know, whatever is a facility type of situation where they've got, you know, nuts and bolts happening, I think it'd be, you know, an interesting thing to see.
So do we give an option to them based on their production and?
I think it's the option is what the type of business is, what
Right.
it is. So if it's Golden Hill or something that's a, you know, we could still meet in an office there, you know, in the facility. We don't have to be.
You walk through the whole thing in order to get to the woman's office.
Oh.
And last year I didn't meet in it, like, I don't even think there was like an office that
Well,
we
then
met,
it would
like,
be up to you. You
yeah.
would decide which ones were meetable and which ones weren't.
When do the site visits have to be completed?
Technically, you should have them done by the end of the year. Last year, we had several spill into January because it was too late by the time all this stuff got wrapped up. I also did have people complaining, and I don't disagree. Doing it right at year end is very difficult,
It is.
and doing it right in the beginning of January is also difficult because of holidays. So I would like to start them in the beginning of December.
And then can't you just spread them out through the year?
Yeah, I was kind of wondering that too, because we're not gonna have all their information from Paris anyway, right?
No, they
So-
don't give it to us when we go
No,
there.
no, I
We
understand,
go
but
there.
I'm saying, so we're still, I don't know.
Well,
What
other
dictates-
IDAs meet more than one time and are in constant contact through the year with their projects. But I do think it's important to have the year-end visit to be able to discuss what happened throughout the whole year.
Yeah.
So,
So what, I guess what I'm wondering is, we're sending out letters, they're preparing to send information, they know Paris is coming up. So I'm just wondering, is there anything that binds us to have, that they have to all be done by the end of December? Or if we start them in December and we can end them by the end of January? I don't know if there's anything that dictates that they have to do all the site
well,
visits.
it's for the year, so then if you do it in January, it's next, that was my,
But the Paris report stuff is also for last year, but we're not getting the data
Yeah, so,
until
I mean,
the new year, so.
I
I'm just trying to
think-
give you some wiggle if we need it.
Yeah, but the other thing that we do, and I want to do a better job with this year, is by spacing it out, like, because it was like mostly the end of December, is being able to put all of the ones that are like in New Paltz together, so that you're not driving,
Right.
all
And you
over,
could
and it
do
saves a lot of time.
5 in one day or something.
Yeah,
And just go from one to the other. That makes a total sense because they are gonna be
Yeah,
like,
so that's why I wanted to start it a little earlier, and I think by starting at the beginning of December is plenty of time to do it.
Okay, so it sounds like for this fiscal year, we start in December, we do the site visits, you can make a determination whether Zoom or in person makes sense. Big new business and the ability to have access to the facility. And then moving forward, we should think about a regular schedule throughout the year for site visits, so we're not doing it all again.
And also doing it again,
Yeah,
though.
exactly, yeah.
No, so like, if
Yeah,
I
no, I got
visit you in January, or June, I also visit you in December?
Yeah.
Okay,
We're
so
on the
I'm,
same
yeah, I
page.
just want to understand.
But just
what you're
making
saying.
sure that we're doing one more visit per year.
The only issue though is the amount of time, and so that's part of what's in here in the staff time. I'm $9,000 or $10,000 worth of time to be able to do the site visits.
So it's
Yeah,
not paid?
because
9 or 10,
it's
something like
driving, it's being
It's the
there.
driving
Yeah.
and the being there, yeah. And we really did try our best to schedule things in the same locations on the same days, but it was difficult when we didn't know all the projects yet.
Do we bundle some of this cost up into what our applicants pay in their project fees and stuff?
So that was part of the reasoning when we put in the annual fee, was because we have all this stuff to do. So it does, like the annual fees come out to be around, give or take $35,000 for the year. And so that's supposed to help offset the compliance, which is driving there, but also dealing with the parish reporting when they send in their documents.
Is that enough, do you think?
$35,000? Probably not. Depends on what you're considering on that.
Okay, can we keep moving?
Yeah, okay. So we're in agreement that, we don't have to pass a motion on this, do we?
Well, are we asking them all for these same things? I think these all made sense. What we asked for, the NYS 45s, you have to do all 4 quarters now because New York State changed the form. Then a payroll journal, we have to have the total hours on there, and I think I wanna also add and gross wages, so that we can compare that to the NYS 45s. But then the liability, all those insurance, we need those. The ST 340 is if they have the sales tax, we need that, the bond statement, we need that. And then there was a $100 fee, that they also had to pay towards the CPA as well.
Okay. Let me ask you this too, do we ever ask, or what do you think of the idea to ask the question if they've been in any litigation last year?
We could ask that, we could put that on the questionnaire.
Yeah.
And any information
Because
about
I
it.
think after our discussion with governance meeting
That's a good
about
point.
some concerns and issues around, you know, with our one particular
Yeah, so
client.
we did write on here, the only other question on here is, are they in event of default under the installment agreements? We could add right there, involved in any litigation,
Mhm.
and if so,
Yeah.
please. I think that's a good idea.
That is a good idea.
Okay, so just to recap, we're gonna add any gross wages, right?
Yep.
Speed to the CPA,
Yep, that's on here.
oh, it's already on there, so we don't have to change that, and then litigation.
Yep.
Okay,
Then page 179 is I did not really use this last year. This is what the Office of Economic Development used when they went around to each site, and they would ask these questions, but I don't think that these are necessarily relevant to the IDA. These are more relevant to economic development. So I do think it's important, especially this year. I would ask about any challenges that they face with employment and like any challenges because of COVID or something along those lines. But I didn't know if anybody had anything else to add.
no, I didn't see anything here on it.
Okay,
So
I guess-
what, do you have a checklist did you have anything to use?
I used this, but I didn't really ask. It's not really relevant to ask if they are going to be doing any large capital investments for the future. That's literally just to do a new project with us, and I don't think we need to do that.
Right.
So I just really asked how is it going?
So,
And what challenges
so
they
one of the other things is to, like again, having some of the conversations we've been having with some compliance issues. I wonder if there's anything on here we want to ask about. Do they anticipate any challenges? I mean, there's something about challenges, but I guess I'm getting a sense of, I guess you're getting at this, has the project had any obstacles or challenges with employment? But do they foresee any of those either moving forward into the new year? I don't know. I guess I
Well,
haven't
they're gonna all
crafted the
say
question really
COVID.
well, but I'm just
But I could
thinking in
say
terms
this
of,
past year, or do you anticipate any over
So
the next year?
For example, we have projects that are so, they're, the percentage that they need to be compliant. And do they see that continuing next year, or what plans do you have?
Well, yeah, because they may not have enough employees because of COVID and everything
Right,
else, so
but
they
it's-
see that their employee numbers are not gonna be what they should be.
Right, and I think part of that is just signaling to them that we see that, we know that, and we're trying to work with them, but at the same time be realistic with them.
Yeah, I mean, we have to specifically ask about COVID and employment because ABO said it's not good enough to, like, when our projects are underperforming, we can't just say, oh, it's because of COVID. We have to have actually had the conversation and document it, so that, and I think you're right, I think I would just change it to say, and do you anticipate any issues moving forward? What kind of things are you trying to do to mitigate that, if anything?
Okay. Do we need to pass motion on any of this, Rose?
No, so you guys, you would prefer that we, do the on-site?
I think the preference is to do on-site, but leave it to your discretion
Right.
if it's not.
Exactly,
whatever
we're
reason,
applicable
client, not
on site.
I think we're also coming to the board to ask the board to participate in
Yes,
site
that's
visits.
hugely
So
important.
can we make sure we get that on,
Yep, in the
I
minutes.
remember.
Yeah, it'll be in the minutes
For the
and all
board
that.
meeting to,
Yeah.
which I already made myself a note, thank you. But we don't have to do any motions or any approval with the board until we actually make changes. in the
Yeah,
policy,
there's
right?
nothing, and there's nothing policy-wise here, it was just going through what we do and is there anything we add, and I think the litigation is
Okay,
a good add.
alright, alrighty, thank you. Anything else on that, Faye?
Nope.
Alright, Brooklyn Bottling, closeout, page 180.
This is the sheet that Loki Brill did,
Yep.
and what we normally do, then on page 181 is an exhibit from their closing documents of what they have to send back to us to verify their cost. You remember we had talked about,
Auditing instead of
yeah,
checking.
Office State Comptroller says that just doing this isn't good enough, they want us to do more to verify the total cost of the project. So I just didn't know if anybody had more ideas.
Yeah, because isn't this where we were talking that they wanted all canceled checks in the
Yeah.
project, which is totally
You
ridiculous.
can't do that, you
and not
imagine a
feasible.
$60 million project, Faye, and getting a copy of every canceled check.
That's what the comptroller requires.
Yeah, no, I don't know how else, how
So
else do you
my
determine it?
other thought was you do this, but you also, when like Brooklyn Bottling came in, they had to give us 3 years of audited statements because they were currently going, right? You look at that, and then you look at their new financial statement, and then you see like what the difference is in fixed assets, you should be able to get a rough idea, so that would be one other way to verify it. But OSC didn't think that was good enough either, and I went, well, that's just crazy.
So where are we then if they don't think anything's good enough?
Yeah, so I think we just have to do what we feel is good enough and what we feel we can stand behind.
I think the audited financials is checks.
I'll have to ask Joe Scott like where that would go.
Yeah.
Or if that's some kind of resolution that we would pass, I'm not sure, so,
So you'll follow with it?
yeah, I'll follow up.
Can you think of anything else, Faye? I don't think, it's not feasible to get all the checks. So aside from getting their audited financials, just
Well,
what
if
you
it's an
think of,
audited financial, that should be pretty solid.
right?
So to me, that's kind of a final word.
Yeah, and I think if they for some reason didn't put something in the fixed asset account and put it in some kind of expense account, then the project would have to explain it to us. Like why is this different? And then I think that having that follow up and having like a documented dialogue about like this doesn't match, why doesn't it match? Oh, okay. I think that's reasonable.
I think that's the way to go. I like that.
Okay.
Great.
Alright, we don't need to pass motions or anything like that, so, and we'll have Scott review that. Okay, great. So, we're moving into review of current policies, on page 183. The first policy is the fee schedule guidelines.
Right.
Okay, so, last time we met, we, since the board was approved having, the 0.5 to 1% for, renewing projects. But the other thing that has come up around fee schedule is, two items. One is looking at the complexity of projects that we're likely to have and the amount of work that it takes, for roads in terms of these what I'd like to discuss is the possibility of adding to the fee schedule, a fee for the number of tenants in any given project, and we make an adjustment to that and call it, tenant fees. And, so, in our preliminary discussions, Rose and I, we were thinking something like $100, per tenant that makes up any given project, so that's what we're,
More than 100,
It's gotta be more than 100.
at least,
Oh,
at least.
that's-
I said, yeah, 200 or 500, because it's, for, as you saw in the prior document, it's 3 different certificates of insurance, 4 quarterly reports, and a payroll journal that gets verified against those things
each tenant.
for every single tenant.
So how many hours do you think that would be? Just roughly. That will give us an idea.
Problem is that you don't get it, if you handed it to me perfectly, I would say maybe $200 per tenant is enough. $100 per tenant would be enough, but they don't, it's not handed to you perfectly, and you have to make sure you have everything, and there's a lot of back and forth.
So if everything was, just gave you what you needed, maybe $200 worth of your time,
For each tenant?
Yeah. if they did it right, but if not, so what I'm trying to get at is.
Yeah,
we're
I would
not
say
going
between
to,
$100 and
so-
$200 if it was exactly perfect
And
every
if
time.
not,
Back and forth for one of them, particular. Yeah, I would say between, just depends on how bad they are. It could be between 300 and 500 per tenant, but if you're doing it per tenant, maybe 300 is enough.
you're kind of splitting it in the middle,
Yeah.
saying that there's gonna be some
Some
things,
that
but
will
it's not gonna
be and some that
perfect.
won't, or 300, yeah. Does that sound fair?
I think based on what your experience is, yeah.
I think to me, that sounds like nothing.
300 per tenant?
Yeah.
On top of their already
Already.
fee.
Yeah, this is.
And
on
we're
top
not,
of-
they don't have,
No, on top of the original, the principal fee.
yeah, and they don't have their own employees, right? Usually it's only the other one, so like they're already taking care of one essentially with their annual fee. Although at the same time, I do see what you're saying because it's unfair, it's literally looking at the exact same documents 5 times as opposed to 1 time, so it's almost unfair to the ones that only have their own.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, to me, it's, I personally would say $500 per tenant, because it's a tenant. It's, you know, it's another major entity of the whole thing. And $500 is nothing, as far as I'm concerned. Because they're paying 1% of the total project, right?
Maybe tenants after, maybe you do 500 and you say like, maybe it's not for every tenant, like the first tenant's free, cause some of them do have tenants. So like, for example, Albany Med has the emergent care at PSH in Saugerties. I think whatever their fee is covers that whole project, there's only one employer there. So it doesn't make sense to charge somebody else for 5 tenants if the other ones are getting 1 tenant for free.
Yeah.
So maybe the first tenant is free and then it's
So
500 for every tenant.
$500 per tenant after the one tenant.
Yeah,
Okay.
does that sound okay?
Well, the first tenant is the principal though, right?
Sometimes not. No, like Kingston Medical Properties, they don't physically have employees or rent there,
But they have a tenant.
but they have 5 tenants on that one.
Right.
But everybody else has like 1 tenant and gets that for free with their annual fee. So maybe we just do $500 per tenant after the first tenant.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Okay. All right, and then the other potential fee we just talked about earlier was, $2,000 to the application fee instead of $1,000.
Oh, for the escrow.
Yep.
Yeah, so the application fee wouldn't change, it would just be the amount. The agency has established a deposit of $2,000 to cover the background checks and public hearings. So change that to 2,000. Yeah, 1 would have been enough before, but the transcript alone for the Kingstonian was $1,100.
So it's the background check, and what else is in there?
The live stream,
Oh, yeah, live stream,
the public hearing notice that goes out in the newspaper,
got it.
and the transcript from the professional stenographer.
So this is for the escrow that they put in? do we need to pass a motion for this to,
I would say, yeah, so on
or does this
page,
not get passed until we send it to the board?
no, passes here.
Okay.
So page 190 is the resolution we did last time, and so I'll amend the Schedule A, because that's for the transfer to a new owner. So we'll amend Schedule A to do 500 per tenant after the first tenant, and then a $2,000 deposit into escrow. And then I can, once you have the resolution, then I can amend the policy accordingly.
So we pass a motion to do that, then it goes into here, then it goes to the board. Okay. Hey, you wanna make a motion? Or do you want me to do it?
You make it, I'm just writing it down, but
Okay,
it's 5,
I move that we, make additional change to Schedule A on page 190 of the fee schedule guidelines to include $500 per tenant after the first tenant, be added as a charge, and $2,000 from $1,000 to $2,000 in escrow, to cover a variety of costs, including background check, live stream, et cetera. A second?
oh, I'll second.
All in
I'm
favor?
writing.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, okay. I think, given time and my mess up earlier, that, we will table procurement, and the rest of the policy reviews for our next audit meeting. I make a motion that we end our meeting.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Can you stop the live stream?